Or that morning, y'all. So we just finished up with Latin America, and now we're going to take things in a new direction, kind of. We're going to move over to Europe, across the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean. But we're going to kind of do Europe differently than I did Latin America, where Latin America, we kind of studied it as this cohesive unit. Europe, I'm going to break it down into just a few countries, and then we'll kind of just summarize Europe at the end. But I'm doing this because I've got some countries I really enjoy and I know a lot about in Europe. So those are the ones we're going to focus a lot on. As you will learn further on in your studies, if you go further to college and whatnot, a lot of people will only teach about things they specialize on, whereas in high school, you kind of focus on like the wider variety of things to give kids more general comprehending, where in college it'll be more focused. So for this little bit, we're going to kind of sort of mimic something like that and just kind of do a case study on a few countries. So we're going to do Russia first. They're my personal favorite country in Europe. I don't know why they're my favorite. I just find their culture very fascinating and their history very fascinating. Their geography is really cool, and it's just an incredible place to learn about. So we're going to start with the physical geography of Russia. So this big, huge landmass here is Russia. This is their Mercator projection, so it isn't a very accurate portrayal of it, I would say. It's pretty accurate, I guess, but it's also it's distorted because of the map, which we talked about in the very first session. But in any case, quite a huge landmass, covers from Europe all the way to the end of Asia. So for the guided notes, you're going to have to write down a lot of this stuff. Mountains and plateaus divide and border the country. I didn't save it when I edited. I guess this might be the original one. But so it's got a map and plateaus, which just like a smaller mountain range essentially, but they're bordered by mountains. On the Mongol, they've got mountains down in the middle where like it's Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, and then they have the Ural Mountains in the west side in Europe. Caucasus Mountains, that is where the name Caucasian comes from. Caucasus Mountains are we call Caucasians now, so whiter skinned people. And in the southwest, the highest point in the Caucasus Mountains is Mount Elbrus, and they're in the southwest of Russia, around Georgia. So we've got the Russia, while also being home to many large mountain ranges, is also home to the world's largest plains state of massive plains areas. So the plains areas in Russia, there's two different ones. There's the North European in Europe. Ukraine is also plains. So the area that Ukraine and Russia have that border each other, that's the Northern European plain. Southern European plain, and that is more located kind of within what we would consider Asia, southeastern Russia, southwestern, sorry. So it would be like southeastern Europe, but a little bit outside. So that soil is rich, and most of the population lives there. So coasts, seas, lakes, and rivers. The longest continuous coastline of any country in the world. It is by far. It has many very long rivers. It has Caspian Sea is contained entirely within. Some of the world's largest lakes are also in Russia. Big, everything's big in Russia. It borders the Arctic, the Pacific Ocean, the Baltic Sea, which would be the Atlantic Ocean, an inlet there, the Black Sea, and the Caspian Sea, which we'll talk all about. They have Lake Baikal, the world's deepest freshwater lake. It's quite huge. This is what the coastline looks of it. The Black Sea. So this is the Black Sea. Russia borders it here. And they also own this island located within the Black Sea called Crimea. And that is their outlet into the Mediterranean Sea, which they can get through the Bosphorus Strait, which Turkey controls. They go through there, and then they can get out into the Mediterranean Sea from there. The Caspian Sea has no outlet. So the Caspian Sea is just basically a massive blackwater lake, or saltwater lake, sorry. I saw the Black Sea, so I mixed them up. And then we've got Lake Baikal. This is a picture of it. That's also located entirely within Russia. And it provides 20% of fresh water to the world. So there is a ton of fresh water in that lake. And then the Russians have the Volga River, which is highlighted in red here. It's the longest river in Europe, but it's only the 4th longest river in Russia. So Russia has 3 rivers that are longer than that in Asia. And it also has the longest river in Europe. So that kind of just helps put into perspective how massively huge Russia is. Yeah, maybe I should be spending more time on these slides, but I suppose you guys can pause. So sorry if I'm going too fast. We'll slow down a little bit here. So we have the Siberian rivers. These are these very long rivers that are longer than even the Volga. And these rivers will turn into ice. They'll freeze completely. And then a lot of Russians will use them as highways. They become basically highway systems to transport goods out to Siberian towns. From most of Russia all lives like in this area where those plains areas are. And then all of this area is quite sparsely populated and underdeveloped. So a lot of them, there's no way to get there except for in the winter when the rivers freeze so you can drive on the water. Because when the rivers melt, the land becomes flooded and it becomes swampy and it's very hard to maintain roads out there. So a lot of times the roads are very low quality in Eastern Russia. And a lot of the people out in Siberia have a large degree of autonomy where they don't really rely that much on the government from Moscow for their goods. They're sort of self-reliant. And then they kind of run their own show in a lot of ways and have very different customs and rules and laws than the people in Moscow and St. Petersburg. Quite big cultural differences. So we're going to talk a little bit about natural resources. We'll get into the cultural differences later. So some of the natural resources that Russia has is it's got a lot of oil and natural gas, coal and hydroelectric power. So it's really big energy provider. Most of Europe, most of Eastern Europe especially, relies on Russia to receive energy. So one of the problems that they've had is, like Ukraine, for example, is when Ukraine doesn't do something Russia wants, Russia will turn off the gas that they supply to Ukraine, and then Ukrainians can't heat their houses. So they're sort of reliant on Russian natural gas, and to a large degree, so is Germany and Sweden and Finland, and many other European countries. And so one of the major concerns is that Russia will use this oil and natural gas supplies as a way to influence European life. And so that's a really big tension point between Russia and the rest of the world right now. And the farming, the only 10% of the land is arable in Russia. So you can only farm on about 10% of the land due to the cold. So it is, it's a lot of it is tundra and forest and things that aren't really, tough to grow farms on, kind of like if you were in northern Minnesota or something. But there is the Black Earth Belt, which is very rich soil, fertile land, an area. It's Ukrainian. It's an area that borders Ukraine. Ukraine was a part of Russia for hundreds of years, and then it gained its independence after a Soviet Union leader granted it independence from Russia. And there's a lot of animosity and fighting right now in Ukraine because of pro-Russians versus anti-Russians are having a civil war in Ukraine right now because of this idea about, like, are they Russian or are they Ukrainian? Like, what's their real identity? And that they get grains, so they make a lot of wheat, sugar, beets, produce. They make a ton of food. They supply a lot of food to the world, especially like Eastern Europe and Southern Asia. And Siberia is 1/5 of the world's forested land and timber, so they make a lot of wood. So Siberia in a lot of ways sort of resembles like northern Canada or northern Minnesota, if you kind of want to put that into perspective. So anyways, we'll call it good there. I'll post the guided notes. Thanks y'all for watching, and have a great day.